Hello, and welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, and today I'll be talking about how to use the tarot in day to day life. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. All right, so for our main discussion today, we're going to be talking about how to use the tarot in day to day life. So, one of the ways you could do that is I talked about this a little bit in getting to know your deck, but you could pull a card a day. So you could make it sort of like a ritual every morning. Maybe if you do daily journaling or have a hot drink in the morning, you can pick a deck and pull a single card a day, and just sort of interpret that as like a message for the day or something to think about. So that's sort of one way to do it and incorporate it into your daily life. Another way you can use the tarot in day to day life would be pulling cards on a full moon or new moon cycles. Um, this is a common thing in sort of like the witchy tarot world. Um, and like I talked about in my tarot spreads episode, oftentimes um, other folks on the internet will post, maybe they create tarot spreads on the new moon or full moon cycles. And so usually there's like an astrological correspondence for the moon. Like I'm recording this January 14th, 2025, and we're just going through the full moon in Cancer right now. And so that would be one way to do it. And you could sort of pull a card to see, again, sort of like a message or maybe a thing to focus on for the full moon or new moon. You could also do it in a different way. So you could kind of find a card in your deck. So instead of just pulling sort of a random one, you could go through and think about what sort of maybe ritual you're going to do. For example, um, Gabriella Herstick, one of my favorite witches, led a healing meditation for the LA fires yesterday on the 13th. And she selected the Moon card and I believe the Ace of Cups card from her Goddess of Love deck to invoke the wateriness of the moon and the water energy from the Ace of Cups as part of the ritual and like some healing elements. So she took specific cards out of the deck as sort of a thing to focus on as part of the ritual. Again, this was sort of a healing meditation, thinking about putting out the fires in LA that have been going on for the last couple of days, that have been really bad. And so she sort of talked about that sometimes the card correspondence for the moon or new moon might not make sense. So she was talking about the card that normally would be associated with this full moon cycle would be the Chariot, which is a very fiery oriented card, which didn't sort of feel right when it was in relation to trying to put out fires and have healing for LA right now, for Los Angeles. And so she picked specific cards with sort of the energy that she wanted to come across and to sort of focus on as part of the ritual. So again, you could do that, pull specific cards out that you want or that you want sort of that go with what you're maybe again a ritual that you're doing or journaling or something you want to focus on. And you can always look in the deck guidebook to sort of see what it has to say about what cards might work. You can also just sort of go through one by one the cards in the deck and just sort of see like what calls to you. I think that can be really fun. And just again, you can go off the imagery alone. You can go off what you know about sort of the meaning or the symbolic parts of the card. If there's a ritual you want to do, or even like if you have an altar, so that's another thing. You could put a card on your altar that, again, you maybe want to commune with or worship or center for a certain amount of time. I know I've done that before. Um, so, again, picking a specific card out of the deck and sort of putting it in a place in your home, an altar like that, and sort of, again, seeing it every time you go to your altar. You could do that with the changing of the seasons, pull a different card. You could again do it with the full or new moon cycles. Or you could just kind of, if you have an altar that you keep up all the time, then maybe there's like a certain card, like a goddess or um, a certain energy you want to have on your altar at that time, and you could put a specific card there. Sometimes, even when I pull a card a day, I might put that card again in sort of like a visible spot where I'm going to see it multiple times, or at least sort of when um, a couple times throughout the day, maybe before I go to bed, to just sort of think about that card. Um, so yeah, a couple other ways that you can use tarot in day-to-day life. Um, right, I think like a common one is sort of pulling cards or doing a spread to use tarot to kind of make decisions or answer a question to see where you land on something. Um, Again, the way I do this is maybe not always in a traditional way of like, oh, what should I do in this situation? But sometimes I might do it, and often for me, it looks like sitting on my bed, pulling cards before bed, see what they have to say. Is there a theme? But you could also have it be more specific and say, okay, right, there's this thing coming up, or I have to make a choice soon. I'm debating. There's two different jobs that I'm thinking about, like which one should I do? So you can ask sort of a specific question or have something in mind, and ask the cards like, what do I need to know about this? Or even pull different cards for like, okay, if I choose this job, like what are some things I should keep in mind? Or what's something I should know? Or what's going to be like the vibe of the job, right? I think, again, we're sticking with the job example, right? You interview, you might know the company, you might get sort of a certain vibe in particular, but what's it going to look like for you, sort of in that place of work or in that position? And right, it doesn't necessarily mean that one job's like better than another. It might just mean like, do I want to be in this job where I'm going to be called into a leadership role and I'm going to be managing other people, and sort of maybe the energy around that or what the vibe's going to be, and maybe a different job just again looks different, and maybe you get more like a self care vibe or like a healing, or you're going to be in a really nice community. So sometimes it can just sort of, I think of tarot often as like a way to sort of mirror back what I might already be thinking and feeling, but just in a more clear, concise, visual way. So sometimes you might have already picked up on those vibes, but then maybe when you pull the cards, um, it might again just sort of help you focus or sort of maybe come to terms with what that job or whatever the question or thing might actually look like for you long term. Um, Another option for using cards every day would be to use a book like Tarot for Change by Jessica Dorr to go through every card in order from a deck and get to know it better. So, again, that book goes through sort of all 78 cards with like a couple pages description on each. It's a very like psychology, sort of like self help or growth mindset book. Um, so I know for me, like I don't necessarily pull the card when I like read about it in the book, but every time I pick up the book or every time I think to look at it, um, I do open it up, read one of the next cards in the book, and then I sort of move my bookmark to the next one for the next time that I choose to pick it up. So that's sort of like a passive way or like a less formal way to get to know some of the cards or to sort of just see like, okay, like again, I'm going in order, right? So it's not like you don't know what the card's going to be, but just what's the day, right? What's the message I need to hear today? And right, again, I probably the last time I picked up this book was maybe like a week ago. I think I talked about it on another podcast episode, around like spreads or ways to get to know your deck. So I probably picked it up and looked at one of them then. Um, but again, you can utilize tarot books to help you maybe facilitate or get to know or sort of make a practice of doing tarot every day. I don't think you have to do it every day. I realize the name of my podcast is Everyday Tarot, so it sort of sounds like that's what I'm saying. But I think I'm also trying to say like tarot can be an everyday thing. It doesn't have to be like a really big thing that takes a lot of time and a lot of ritual or a lot of reverence about it. I think you can throw a deck of cards in your suitcase when you travel, and then when you think about it, you take them out and pull a card and journal about it or whatever you want to do. And then you might not pick it up for a couple of days or that kind of thing. Like to me, it's a nice thing to have, again, sort of like my journal or like a book or like a thing to be reflective about or sort of focus on. But I try not to keep too much reference about it for me personally, just because sometimes that in my mind can build up as like, oh, it has to be this thing. I don't have time for that. What's it going to be? I have to do an elaborate spread and have all this time and write everything down afterwards. Like that is part of what might prohibit me from being consistent with tarot or from picking it up when I do think it's helpful. Just looking through my notes, but yeah, so those are most of the ones that I have to sort of talk about how to use tarot in day-to-day life. Obviously, this is just a sample of ways. Like I said, my vibe, I mean, I'm pulling cards for this podcast pretty often, but a lot of the other times I'm sitting on my bed pulling cards. My cat is joining me. Maybe I'm just kind of looking at them and thinking about it. And then again, maybe I journal about it, maybe not. Occasionally I'll pull a card and put it on my altar. But that's really it, right? I really like talking about tarot and I like utilizing it. And I don't think it has to be this really big special thing, unless you want it to be, right? There can be a time and place for that. But, right, part of what I'm encouraging is that it can be a thing you do every day, and that can still be beneficial or helpful in that realm. All right, so let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today. And I am pulling from the Goddess of Love Tarot deck by Gabriela Herstig and illustrated by Julia Popescu. And I'll have the link to that on my website and in the show notes. But the first card I pulled is the Ten of Pentacles reversed. So I'm going to read a little bit of what the tarot deck book says about this, and then I also pulled another card. And this Ten of Pentacle cards actually kind of flew out when I was shuffling, so that is a thing that I try to respect in my tarot deck, and I usually do say, okay, that's what the deck wants me to have right now. So it says the Ten of Pentacles is the last of the minor arcana cards, a microcosmic version of the world and a vision of enchantment grounded in the earth. It is the blessing of all the work you've done to get wherever the hell you are now. Look around to see the sacredness in what you've manifested. This card exposes you to the truth of the magic in the material and mundane. This card's about material successes, but also about legacy. Consider how you'll take what you've grown and gained and pass it on, sharing the prosperity with those you love, the earth, and future generations. You want to ensure wealth for the spiritual ecosystem of which you are a part. When this card is reversed, which this one was, it says it represents disillusionment and disenchantment. Things aren't happening in the way or timeline you hoped, and there may be more fear to overcome before you're able to get what you want. And the affirmation, which is the thing that is included in this tarot deck guidebook for each card, is I'm grounded in the riches of the goddess. I share my abundance effortlessly, which I love the sound of that. So again, with the reversal here, it sounds like there's a little bit of like, okay, you're trying to do things. There's a little bit of disenchantment, disillusionment. Things aren't happening the way you want it in the timeline. There might be some fear around like what you need to do or something to overcome before you're able to sort of get to where you want to be. Yeah, and then the other card I pulled is the Tower reversed, which is a major arcana card. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up in the deck book what it says for that. I'm not going to read the whole thing for the Tower because it is pretty long, but let's look at the reversal for it. So it says when reversed, the Tower becomes an auspicious omen, a reminder that the hard part is over, The power is back in your hands, and you have moved through the peril towards rebirth. The affirmation is I am a dark goddess of love. I embrace pain and pleasure as a path to liberation. All right, so thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast will come out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. Links for the tarot deck will always be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them. And all right, see you soon. Bye bye.